Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming to this week's edition of the North Coast Journal. I am your host, Tanya Shrum, and we are joined by North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome to you both on this rainy morning.
Hey, Tanya.
Hey, Tanya. How you doing?
I'm doing so much better now that I'm over the crud, and I appreciate you all steering the ship without me last week.
Absolutely, but nice to have you back.
It is wonderful to be back, and another wonderful week here in Humboldt County. Why don't you fill us in on what's coming to this week's cover story, Thad? Another great story.
Tanya, this week, actually last week, we hit a major milestone on the Klamath River in the decades-long now effort to remove the 4 dams from the lower river. So we took that as a good opportunity to catch up with the folks doing the removal and restoration work, and kind of both, take a moment to appreciate the river running free for the first time in more than a century. The milestone they hit was they took out the last of the coffer dams, which are the small temporary dams that they put in to kind of allow for the removal activity and stuff. But they took out the last of those, and so the river, while there's still more removal work to be done as far as getting some of the ancillary structures out and a few remnants of the dams, the river is actually free flowing and back in its channel for the first time in 100 years. So we took that as a good opportunity, like I said, to catch up with some of the folks doing the actual work, look a little bit forward to the restoration work, and talk about kind of both the magnitude of the moment and then some kind of immediate concerns with what they're seeing on the river.
I really appreciate your structure of this article and kind of explaining it for folks that maybe don't know all the ins and outs. And going into that, what are some of the obstacles that they are now discussing with you?
Yeah, so, well, first, as to the structure of the story, I appreciate that. And one of the things we really wanted to highlight with this is, I think there's been a lot of talk about dam removal, obviously, but I think a lot of folks have either glossed over or not kind of gotten the granular level detail that, like, these are 4 really unique different dams, all built at different times that serve different functions, and so removing them is they kind of has to each be done different and individually, and then the restoration efforts around each of these dams and the reservoirs have to be kind of tailored. So we really wanted to highlight that, and now with all the removal work pretty much done, we have these wonderful kind of before and after pictures of each of these places on the river, and so we really wanted to highlight that too. But, the biggest thing kind of right now on the Klamath is that, like I said, they removed that last coffer dam at Iron Gate, which is the lowest on the river of the 4 dams that were there. And as has been known this entire time, there's millions of cubic yards of sediment trapped behind these dams. And so that's why folks remember they drew down the reservoirs behind these dams in the winter months, kind of when the river was at its natural highest flows, with the hope that the higher flows would kind of wash all of that sediment out to sea. And for the most part, that has happened. But there is remnant sediment kind of at the bottom of what used to be the Iron Gate Reservoir. And what they found is that the sediment is really, really fine particulate. It's basically, decades and decades of algae that has kind of decomposed into this sludge that they can't really manually take out with like an excavator and truck away, just because it's too liquid. So they have to release it down the river, but it is I can't remember the term Craig Tucker used, who's the consultant working with the Kuruk tribe on it. But it is basically, it sucks oxygen out of the water once it's released. And so there's a big fear. If they released all of this at once, it would basically flood the river with this substance and pull all of the oxygen out of the river. And they fear it could result in a fish kill. Just now, as adult salmon are kind of re-entering the mouth of the river, starting to spawn. Um, and so what they're doing is kind of releasing it a little bit at a time, and they have biologists and monitoring stations downriver, kind of constantly monitoring the oxygen content of the river. And so what they're doing is kind of releasing it bit by bit, as much as they can, without, in Craig's term, kind of nuking the river and turning it into an inhospitable place for the fish. They're under a bit of a time crunch because they estimate these adult salmon will be hitting the Iron Gate, what used to be the Iron Gate Reservoir, but the former dam site, about September 20th. And so they're trying to get all this stuff out of the river, slowly but surely, up until those adult salmon reach Iron Gate. So far so good, but it's kind of a tenuous balancing process. And one of the things that Craig really wanted to highlight is that, if you drive by the Klamath right now, it looks like chocolate milk. It looks sediment filled. It looks muddy. That's not a surprise. He likened it to doing open heart surgery on a patient. It's inherently traumatic. It might be in the patient's best, or it is in the patient's best long-term interest, but there's going to be some immediate trauma. And so that's kind of what the Klamath is experiencing right now. Although, again, they're very hopeful that gets cleared before the fish get up to Iron Gate, or before there's a major rain event that kind of washes all that stuff down naturally.
Absolutely. I know that in an aquarium there are nitrifying bacteria you can add, but that's not exactly something you can do on a river.
I don't think so, no.
And then there's a lot of work being done to restore the overall area, and that was definitely highlighted by you in the article as well. And what an amazing effort.
Yeah, we really wanted to shine a light on kind of that restoration effort. So much of this conversation rightfully has been about dam removal and getting those dams out, but that is really, folks kind of tend to forget that this is both the largest dam removal effort in the United States history, but also the largest restoration effort, river restoration effort in the United States history. And this really marks kind of the turning point from, as we kind of put it in the story, this is the sun setting on the dam removal part and shifting to the sun rising on the restoration effort. And so restoration work has been ongoing. They started replanting or planting and seeding the reservoir footprints as soon as they started drawing them down, really wanting to seize on that time when they had all that wet soil from the drawdown. So they had all the saturated soil, perfect time to try to get seeds germinating and stuff. So there's a big planting late last winter into the spring, and then now they're kind of starting the second leg of the restoration planting. And so what happened is once these reservoir beds started to dry out, they turned into really cracked, dry, kind of clay-like surface that is inhospitable to planting. In some places, I guess, these cracks run about 2 feet deep. So not a great planting surface, but what they've done is brought in some heavy equipment, some farm equipment used to overhaul kind of pasture fields. And what this equipment does is kind of breaks up that chunky clay soil and turns it into a nice planting surface. And so they're going through, starting actually at J.C. Boyle Dam, which is the furthest upriver dam or former dam site, and planting kind of a custom native seed mix for each of the reservoir footprints that kind of matches the naturally growing things there to the ecology. And and so they're going to be doing that. They're planting, I think, another 116,000 plant and tree starts, and really focusing in on, after that planting effort, then they're going to really focus in on cleaning up some of the tributaries and in certain places in the exact places where the dams were removed, really kind of reconstructing the riverbed, because when the dams were built, they cleared out the riverbed down to the bedrock and then built the dam on top of it. And so now what they've done is they've taken out the dams, and now it's just that exposed bedrock. And they need to bring in some boulders and rocks and kind of substrate surface to make those areas a little bit more hospitable to fish, to give adult fish going upriver kind of some calm areas where they can find respite from the current, and to give those juveniles coming back downriver some places to hide from predators and stuff like that.
What a monumentous undertaking. And I just appreciate this story. I know I followed it when you were writing on the beginning last fall. And I just really appreciate your reporting on this, and that you were able to be out there. Before we move on, do you have any additional thoughts on this story for us?
Yeah, just a couple. So one is that I got caught up with Dave Kaufman of Res, which is the subcontractor that's really overseeing the primary entity overseeing the restoration effort. And he just reiterated to me that this is, that this restoration effort is really just getting started, that they're going to be there on site for a minimum of 5 years. And really, what he stressed to me is that they have, it's not a timeline for finishing this project. It's that they have certain metrics that they need to meet to consider this project complete. And so he was really clear in saying, like, we're going to be here until this whole area is restored, and not before. And if something is kind of going haywire, we're going to be here until we get it right. So I want to stress that. So this is really going to be ongoing for some years. And then, just really to reiterate, I mean, what a long process this has been. And, I personally have been reporting on it for, I think, 15 years now, probably plus. And really that it's the only reason we're here with these dams out of that river is because of kind of the stalwart efforts of the Karuk tribe and Yurok tribe and their members. And they have really continually pushed this thing through. And there were plenty of times when folks were ready to give up, and the tribes weren't, and the tribes continued pushing this effort forward. So we're going to be doing some kind of more in-depth reporting coming up soon, kind of looking back at this decades-long effort and the folks who really drove it home.
That's amazing. Thank you again. And I encourage everybody to pick up this week's edition of the North Coast Journal and read and see these before and after photos for yourself.
Tanya.
Thank you, Thad. And with that, we're going to turn to Jennifer and see what's coming to the table.
So much is coming to the table. I just said to Thad today that I cannot keep up. We are having an explosion of new restaurants, restaurant turnover, and also, new trucks and other kinds of food businesses. So just bear with me because we're busy out here. Something that has been exciting. I don't know if you have driven by the former Chalet of Omelets location, RIP, Chalet of Omelets, where I was served once canned asparagus and I wasn't even mad. Anyway.
That's a story in itself right there.
I know, the whole thing. There was supposed to be a cafe over there with Taiwanese snacks and drinks and things like that. It never happened. They did a lot of renovation inside, but the building still sat dormant and was honestly a bit of an eyesore. But thank God it didn't get turned into another fast food place, because listen, I cannot see another Starbucks in this town. It is now Tasty Hub. Tasty Hub, what could it be? Hub is kind of the key word in there, although it is also tasty. Gabby Long, whom you might know as the cheerful face behind in the kitchen at A Taste of Bim and in the truck, A Taste of Bim. She is a person who knows from the restaurant business. She's also the owner of the Grind Cafe, which, by the way, is moving into the courthouse soon. So, if I'm ever taken away at trial, at least I'll go with good crumbs on me. Anyway, so she owns a bunch of businesses. She also sells her sauce, and she's been around, pretty much every aspect of the food business. And over the past few years, she's really seen how the lack of commissary kitchen availability, the kitchens that you need if you're going to, say, make a tomato sauce to sell in the store or have a food truck and you have to do all your prep there, those being lacking in our county, and especially in Eureka, have really put a damper on people who are trying to start new businesses, because not everybody, as she said to me in our conversation, not everybody can just throw down the cash to buy or lease a location and start a restaurant. It's a big risk and there's a ton of overhead. So she has taken over that building, the Chalet building, and put in Tasty Hub, which is essentially a commissary kitchen in the back and a food truck party in the front. So the kitchen can be rented out hourly, weekly, monthly, etc., where you can go in and make your, I don't know, local vegan beef jerky, or you can get your prep done for your, you know, your food truck, your drinks business, etc. And there's also parking. There's about a couple dozen parking spots there, which she's also letting people who use the kitchen and also people who want to come in and just park their trucks get right there on that corner, which is on 5th Street. So heading out of town, out of Eureka north, right on that corner, it's a great location to just like pull over and get food. Also, I'm happy to see that, or I'm happy to hope that some of the dollars that come from people driving through will end up in a local business rather than another fast food business. So she started this business, and I went over to check it out and to talk with her about it. And among other things, what I didn't expect was a bar. Inside in that dining area, there's like, it's a reasonable dining area. In one corner, Big Brothers Big Sisters was set up with a whole bar with cocktails, beer, and wine. And I was like, what is going on here? And apparently she's going to hopefully weekly get in nonprofits to do, like when you go to Arts or to Arts Alive and there's like a nonprofit pour. So the nonprofits can get a temporary alcohol license and take home some of the cash from selling beer, wine, and liquor. So that means that you can go get some, pupusas or the yuca fries, which I tried from the Pupuseria San Miguel truck, yuca fries. That's what you want. And then go inside, get yourself an adult beverage, and eat out of the rain if it's raining, which is kind of a big plus, right? I mean, as she pointed out, food truck sales dip when the weather gets cold and when the weather gets wet. So, being a person who knows how to run a brick and mortar restaurant, how to run a food truck, how to do a packaged food business, she's really got the insight for all of this. And it's really exciting to see her commitment to helping new businesses start. And I asked her, I was really frank. I was like, so I gotta ask, don't you feel like you're helping out people who are going to be your direct competition? And she was like, she was really saying to me, like, I don't see it like that. And she feels like the more the merrier. And, her feeling, I think, is that Humboldt's food culture is improved when there are more businesses. Not everything's going to last, of course, but having a food culture that's vibrant and more diverse, it used to be that, like, for example, the pupusas, you used to have to go out of town for those. But now we have a few options, right? Now we have like San Miguel, we have Vilco, we have, Nicaraguan food. There are people making it, also at Guatemalan Yum Yums, now that I think about it. But the food culture in Humboldt kind of shifted, kind of changed, and has this new cuisine. And trucks and stalls and, small businesses that can do a pickup. Like right now, Karachi Cuisine, which is a Pakistani food business, is using the kitchen to both cook and to have pickup. So you can do your orders. I think you can do some walk-in orders too, but you can order from Karachi Cuisine and get South Asian food and take it home with you, picking up in that little shop. So it's kind of a really great way to encourage startups and to give people a leg up on starting a food business. And one of the things she said to me was, if you can help people, you should. Like, it shouldn't be a question of, is this going to be my competition? Is this going to, serve me long run? What if somebody comes along and makes better jerk wings than her? Not likely. She's really out here trying to help people get their start and to encourage more business incubation in Eureka, which is pretty cool.
It's absolutely a great idea, and I just think it was quite an inspired way to progress with that property. And I hope everybody gets a chance to stop by and sample who's circling around.
So true.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, as always, making us hungry here in the early afternoon. I'd like to pivot back just in our last couple of minutes. Thad has another news story that I would like him to touch on that's coming to this week's journal. Thad?
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. We have a story looking at Redwood Coast Energy Authority is preparing for what a lot of folks anticipate is going to be a fairly contentious meeting on September 26th when it considers adding an allotment of energy from the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant to its portfolio. So, as folks may or may not know, RCEA administers our community choice energy program. And so this basically is the default for most electric customers here on the North Coast. And it is kind of complicated, but it's basically PG&E still kind of runs the power lines and stuff that brings electricity to your house, but RCEA is the entity that determines kind of how that power is procured and then also directly charges you for it. And they have been working on kind of greening their portfolio. That's one of the primary reasons they exist. And currently, about 89% of the electricity that they get is green or carbon free, or renewable or carbon free. I'm sorry. And but they've run into some issues lately. They've been trying to get to 100% renewable power and kind of abandon that goal for 2025, and due in part to sharply rising green energy costs due to increased demand. And anyway, and so at the same time as kind of RCEA has been working toward this goal, Diablo Canyon's nuclear facility, which is run by PG&E, has been in flux. The PG&E announced that it was closing it down a handful of years ago. The state kind of stepped in to save it with a $1.4 billion loan to keep it operational at least till 2030, because the state of California has set these really ambitious green energy goals and carbon-free energy goals. And nuclear, whether folks like it or not, can be a component of that. And currently the plant provides, I think, about 10% of the state's electricity. But as a part of this deal where the state kind of stepped in and loaned PG&E all this money, one of the caveats was that basically all ratepayers in the state of California who buy electricity, no matter who you buy it from, have a line item on their bill that is paying towards this facility's operations. And so the flip side of that is the state said, well, you need to make this energy available to all of the entities in the state that administer electricity. So RCEA has this kind of not one-time deal, but they have a chance each of the next 5 years to decide whether to accept this allotment of energy from Diablo Canyon. To be super clear, this is already paid for, so they're not going to have to buy it. It's already being paid for by all of us on the North Coast who pay our electric bills, and whether we like it or not. And so RCEA has long held that it will not buy nuclear power. Nuclear power will not be a part of its portfolio due to environmental concerns. But now it's rethinking that a little bit because, again, this is already paid for. It's a chance to get free electricity, which could allow it to do one of two things if it chooses to. It could either kind of stabilize its finances. It's operating at its energy portfolio is operating or projected to operate at a really significant deficit next year. I think to the tune of about $4.7 million. So it could offset some of those losses, or it could choose to kind of take this and use the extra money, the savings, and instead of offsetting losses, to further green its portfolio and work closer towards 100% renewable for 2025. And so this is the conversation that's going to be coming before the board on September 26th. Pretty contentious. I talked to some folks in the environmental community who did not want to touch it, did not want to weigh in, at least publicly. One person from a prominent environmental group kind of deemed it a hornet's nest that would divide its membership. And so I kind of expect environmental or comment when it comes to on the 26th to be all over the board between folks who are kind of staunchly anti-nuclear and folks who are saying kind of the climate crisis and the need to reduce emissions is so urgent that any and all action needs to be taken. So it'll be interesting to see what the board does.
Yes, and thank you for that reporting, Thad. Always. I'm sure you will give us the follow-up after that.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate everybody's stories this week. Thank you, Jennifer and Thad. And that wraps up our time for this week. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is available on newsstands. Pick up your copy today, or of course you can find it online at northcoastjournal.com. I am Tanya Shrum. Thanks for being with us and staying informed and supportive of our North Coast community.